Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Thursday, May 29th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Kern County Child Protective Services is struggling to keep enough social workers on staff.
Once they kind of saw the amount of responsibility tied to their job, we just couldn't retain them as much as we wanted to.
How is that being addressed? We'll hear firsthand about the challenges the department's facing, but first, these news headlines. The federal government is investigating whether California is breaking the law by allowing a trans female athlete to take part in a state competition. A 2013 state law allows students to participate in sports based on their gender identity rather than biological sex. The Department of Justice argues that might violate Title IX, which prohibits sex-based discrimination. The trans student will take part in the state's track and field finals at Buchanan High School this weekend in Clovis. Legal notices were sent on Wednesday to state officials, including the superintendent of schools, the attorney general, and the California Interscholastic Federation. A family in Bakersfield is facing deportation despite entering the country legally to obtain care for their young daughter. As KVPR's Joshua Yeager reports, lawyers said at a press conference on Wednesday that the 4-year-old girl could die if she's forced to leave the U.S.
The young girl suffers from short bowel syndrome. The disease requires her to wear an adult-sized backpack that delivers nutrients intravenously, 14 hours a day. This life-saving treatment is only available in the U.S. The girl's mother, Daisy Vargas, said through a translator, deportation would jeopardize her daughter's life.
If we returned back to our country, she would be at the hospital day and night.
Vargas legally entered the United States through humanitarian parole. That was under the Biden administration. But as the new Trump administration cracks down on migrants, her parole was revoked. Gina Amato is an attorney with public counsel. The LA-based pro bono firm is representing Vargas.
This case is heartbreaking, but it's not unique. For so many people fleeing violence, persecution, or who are dealing with life-threatening illnesses, deportation is a death sentence.
She says the main goal is to keep Vargas and her daughter in the U.S. For KVPR News, I'm Joshua Yeager in Bakersfield.
A new report shows San Joaquin Valley counties are among the most affected by pesticides. As KVPR's Carrie Klein reports, these compounds often make their way into drinking water.
Every year, state officials sample groundwater wells looking for pesticide residues. Their newest report is based on samples from 2022. Of the thousands of wells tested across the state, about 10% came back positive for at least one compound. In Fresno County, more than a third of wells were positive. The widest variety of compounds was found in Kern County. Only some of the chemicals were detected at levels that could be considered harmful. Most of those are ingredients of pesticides that are currently in use in Valley Farms, though some are the legacy of pesticides that were banned years ago. State officials say they'll investigate pesticide detections that went above the allowable limits. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
A group of animal rights activists were arrested in Kings County this week. Video posted to social media shows sheriff's deputies arresting the activists outside a goat farm. The activists were with a group called Direct Action Everywhere. They say they object to the mass torture of animals. A video posted to Facebook shows the activists going inside the farm near Stratford and grabbing at least 2 baby goats. The Kings County Sheriff's Office says it was forwarding the investigation to the district attorney's office.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Body 20 in Fresno's Fig Garden Village, offering full-body electromuscle stimulation training sessions. It's a high-tech, time-efficient way to help preserve and rebuild lean muscle. Each 20-minute one-on-one session is guided by a certified coach using FDA-cleared technology. Body 20 accepts health savings account cards. More information available by searching the Fig Garden location at body20.com.
And now to our main story. Child Protective Services is a government agency responsible for investigating child neglect and abuse. And no matter where you go, the local CPS office is probably overburdened with more cases than social workers can handle. And that is certainly the case in Kern County. A recent Kern County Grand Jury report on the county's CPS agency shows high turnover coupled with a lack of support for social workers. Other findings include inadequate funding, staff burnout, and delays in addressing staff complaints. Raquel Hurd has worked for 18 years at Kern County CPS and is currently a supervisor. She tells us that she started her career relatively late at the age of 30, but she says she jumped into this work because she wanted to make a difference in her community. But the reality, she says, is a lot less thank yous than she expected and a lot more challenges to doing her work. Raquel says she didn't know the grand jury report was being conducted, but now that it's out, it validates concerns she'd seen for years. She's also a member of the SEIU Local Chapter 521, which has been in negotiations with the county to address some of these concerns. Raquel joined us for a conversation and told us more about what her job looks like as a supervisor with Kern County CPS.
So I supervise social workers in the court intake area. So court intake social workers are the ones who write the reports to take into the court and see if we can get a judgment in regards to detaining children if we feel that there's an allegation of abuse or neglect, that we have to continue to keep the kids out of the parents' home or remove kids from parents' homes.
I want to pivot to this recent Kern County Grand Jury report that was recently released in April. It looks at the state of Kern County Child Protective Services. It lays out several key findings, including your department's struggles with staff retention and what the report describes as a, quote, lack of competitive salaries. So that report is public, available for everyone to read, but I hope you can tell us how this looks on the ground, especially because you have all those years as a social worker prior to being a supervisor. How have these findings sort of been lived out by you and your coworkers as you do your jobs?
So we do see a pattern, I would say in the last, a little bit pre-COVID, we did see a pattern where we would hire a lot of social workers at one time. But once they kind of saw the amount of responsibility tied to their job, we just couldn't retain them as much as we wanted to. So a lot of our workforce right now, as far as social workers on the floor, are young in years of experience. So that's the main difference. Also, we just have a lot of cases on social workers' caseloads that it becomes overwhelming, not only for the social workers, but for foster parents who are trying to get assistance and get more help from us, or just get more time. Those kiddos that need our time, there's just not enough time to build those relationships, as well as with the parents. I had said this before, but a lot of times it just seems like we're just checking boxes off a list instead of assisting, with changing lives.
What kinds of cases are social workers in Kern County typically having to deal with? Is there like a pattern typically?
So we have more, of course, the majority of our caseload kind of revolves around drug use, domestic violence, mental health. So those are, like, for the most part, our main types of cases, but we also deal with sexual abuse, and we deal with physical abuse as well.
I want to pivot back to the grand jury report because it addresses sexual abuse cases in Kern County. There's actually been a 31% increase in your department responding to those cases in November 2024 compared to the year prior. Do these staffing issues impact your ability to adequately respond to those cases?
I would say that for sexual abuse and physical abuse, the lead on those cases does come from law enforcement. So there are times when we are unable to quickly follow through with investigation, especially if they have a criminal investigation tied to it. So that causes some issues. If a social worker is assigned to a case like that, they are usually from emergency response or from court intake emergency response does usually have the most experienced social workers, so they can handle the ins and outs and know what to do in those cases and who to communicate with. So I don't think that as far as experience is an issue of who gets assigned. It's just how many of those types of cases get assigned to the same people. I think that is what happens, and we don't have enough time to address our secondary trauma that comes with that.
Yeah.
Because there's just one case after the other. So that could lead to maybe, again, that engagement and communication with families to understand why we're involved.
Would you say secondary trauma is one of the biggest challenges facing social workers in Kern County right now?
I would say yes, because we never get to address it. I've seen workers who will just continue to work, and we give them a sexual abuse case, and the next one they get is a physical abuse case. And depending on the circumstance, it could be varying levels of that, right? To kind of minimal, we're like, okay, yeah, there's something there, to the extreme where there's just so much detail, there's so much pictures, and they're just taking it in. And although we would love to talk to them and allow them to kind of just take some time for themselves, they're getting another case. So I think what usually happens in my area for court intake is that they just finally get exhausted and they take the day off, and not that they're taking it because they just don't want to work. They're taking it because they can't work anymore. They need time for their mental health and emotional health to kind of give that a little rest.
You know, over 4,000 Kern County employees just reached a tentative contract agreement through your union. That's SEIU Local Chapter 521. That includes a few hundred employees in the CPS department. How are you feeling about the agreement?
So, of course, I would wish that it was more in regards to wages, but I understand, and this is just my perspective, that I understand that we have to think as a whole and not individually as social workers in regards to a wage, because there was other things that we requested and other bullet points that the county agreed upon. So I think we came a long way from the last best and final offer to what we got recently. Now, does it address the wages for social workers? I don't think so. I think the county and the Board of Supervisors, they still have to look into that. I think they were given several timelines to meet in regards to comparable wages in other counties and staffing issues, so that they can really see that they're not paying, in comparison to other comparable counties, that they're really not paying a livable wage.
That was my conversation with Raquel Hurd. She's a supervisor for Kern County Child Protective Services. And last week, SEIU Local Chapter 521 reached a tentative agreement with the Kern County Board of Supervisors and called off a strike planned for June. Among the agreements with the county is a 6% salary raise for workers, as well as a pay increase for bilingual speakers. The SEIU chapter represents more than 5,000 county employees, including CPS. The supervisors will vote to ratify the tentative agreement at their June 17th board meeting. And that's today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Planet Money helps you understand the economy. We find the people at the center of the story.
Garbage in New York, that was like a controlled substance.
We show you how money influences everything.
Tell me what you like by telling me how you spend your money.
And we dig until we get answers.
I had a bad feeling you were going to bring that up.
Planet Money finds out. All you have to do is listen. The Planet Money Podcast from NPR.